Welcome to the Silver Screen Project, where we look back at a series of films in anticipation of an exciting new cinema release.
In build up to seeing Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, we went back and watched Ant-Man, we went back and watched Ant-Man and the Wasp, and we've just seen the main event itself, Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania.
Woo!
What did you think of Quantumania, Sam?
Yeah, I thought overall I quite enjoyed it. I came out feeling pretty good about it. There's definitely some bits I didn't love. Like the first half was pretty good. It kind of lost its way in the middle, but had a pretty good finale, I'd say. We're going to keep it spoiler free up front just to let everybody know. But Lewis, what did you think of it?
Yeah, I think it was pretty good. Same as you. I think it lost its way a bit in the middle. And I feel like the ending wasn't as bad as some recent Marvel films like Thor and Doctor Strange, but I still felt like the first half was better than the second half quite noticeably.
It almost had the potential that it didn't fully fulfill, I think, was part of it. And certain bits, even with that kind of, we'll spoil it in some ways from trailers and that sort of thing, like some of the kind of sci-fi stuff, like the weird wacky characters, I really enjoyed, but some of it ended up feeling a bit like a Guardians Ragnarok kind of B team kind of thing. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, like it was this whole new world which we haven't really seen before in the quantum realm. Mm-hmm. But it turns out the quantum realm's just kind of another planet from Guardians in many ways. Yeah.
And I don't think any of those new side characters really stood out as much as like a Korg or even like Meek or someone, or like Valkyrie from Ragnarok kind of thing. But I mean, like in terms of like villains, we know from posters and from trailers that Kang is the main antagonist of this. And I think Kang was pretty good overall.
I thoroughly enjoyed Kang. One thing I'd written down, which was a comment I saw on Reddit earlier today, that was Marvel has gone from having like really great films with average villains to having pretty average films with great villains, and I was like, I definitely feel that, because even like Doctor Strange with Wanda was great, Christian Bale in Thor was great, and Kang in this is great.
Yes,
I just feel like they could do a bit more.
I think in lots of ways Kang feels quite different in that we see a kind of sympathetic side to him at times. It's not really too much of a spoiler. We know, if you know anything about him, he's kind of a bit more kind of complex than some characters. Maybe not always. A lot of the time he's just like, I hate time and I'm gonna be blue.
The Conqueror.
The Conqueror, exactly. But I think something about like the matchup between Kang and Ant-Man, who seem very like unmatched and very like, why would those two meet up, in some ways is a negative, because maybe this film could have been anyone else instead of Ant-Man. But in some ways I think they did quite a good job of showing like, this is the first time that we're introduced, anyone in this universe has seen this guy, and he is this kind of big threat that's bigger than this film almost. I think a lot of that was quite effective.
I think that was...
and where it kind of leaves things, again, not spoiling it, was quite a good teaser without being very Marvel. They almost go that way. There's a bit right towards the end where I was like, oh, this is going to be like a portal opens and 5 guys jump out and it's like, hello, we're here. And they do a bit of that, but not in the way that you kind of expect.
Another thing was that obviously it's Ant-Man and the Wasp, so Ant-Man and the Wasp going to be the centre of this, and many people would have guessed that Hank Pym and Janet Van Dyne would be centre of this as well. And I think most of the stuff between them is really good.
Yeah,
I think
the human side of it,
There's parts where one or a few of those characters don't do anything for a long part of this film and then turn up and do something big. They kind of almost take turn having their kind of set pieces.
I do think as well, considering the Wasp is half the title, I don't think that Hope does masses in this.
Thinking back now, like I can't really think of standout things she does, apart from she does one thing towards the end where she kind of
but
gets involved.
In a support factor more than anything. And another character that we see a lot more of in this is Cassie, who's Hope's, not Hope. Well, Hope's like the stepmom, basically.
Yeah, I found it a bit odd how they just acted as if they were just a family, and like she was calling Hank Pym like granddad, and I was
like you're not actually related to these guys.
You were an adult when you met him.
Yeah, that's true. But Cassie, I'm mixed on, and we'll go into it more. But I really liked the characterization. I think the new actress is pretty good.
Yeah,
but Again, I feel there was a bit of wasted potential where I suppose we're just seeing the start of her journey. We spoke last week about the Young Avengers stuff that's going to be on the horizon. I think that's where it's going, but I feel like there were certain elements that could have been a little bit more fleshed out.
I think like with Cassie, she was fun, and like stuff she did was quite cool, and it definitely does seem like it's gearing towards that Young Avengers thing.
Yeah.
But it's also the kind of thing of like, she could be taken out this film and the film wouldn't really change at all.
Well, it's what I was saying as well. Like, I think other than a couple of ways that they've added in the kind of Ant-Man-y powers, and obviously the fact that they shrink down to get to the quantum realm.
Yeah.
I think this could have been any team, really.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's a bit of like, it's a bit of a negative feeling going away when you think about it.
I mean, like you said, you compared it to Guardians, and it's 5 of them in a strange place.
Absolutely.
Some of them have got history, some of them don't. And like, that could be a Guardians.
The
easily.
whole like, oh, I remember this guy from ages ago. Yeah, it could have been Drax. It could have been Rocket. So in that sense, I do wonder how much of this plot was kind of transplanted from somewhere else. Transplant. There's an ant in there somewhere from somewhere else. But that's just it's easy to overthink these things. At face value, I think
I enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it overall.
I think I probably enjoyed it more than Ant-Man and the Wasp, but this is a couple of days after
it was very, very different to what we've expected and what we've seen from Ant-Man. And I don't know how, again, this kind of feels a bit like, yeah, sure, for the third Ant-Man film and maybe the last centering around Scott Lang, there's not anything, spoilers in that sense. It's just he's had his trilogy effectively.
Yeah.
It is a big step up, and the scale's much smaller in a lot of ways, but the stakes, and it's much more kind of world ending, universe ending, but some of that feels a little bit unjustified, undeserved. Maybe the whole way they start off with him, so it starts off with, it's not really a spoiler, it's set after he's done all his adventures with Endgame and stuff, so maybe in that sense they wanted to kind of put him up on that level again.
Yeah,
but maybe it would have been nice to go back to his roots and have a bit more of a personal thing.
This film does seem detached from the first two, and that's not necessarily a negative thing, but it definitely feels like those first two are almost a collective, and then this is another film.
It's strange. Mixed, I would say, but overall I feel pretty positive.
I think the reviews have been mixed, to say the least. A lot of people,
I think the Rotten Tomatoes is like 48 or something like that.
Which I think is a bit harsh. I think people have been. I think I've liked it more than a lot of reviews to suggest.
I think a lot of people have this general fatigue that they don't really let the good stuff permeate. They're just like, oh, it's Marvel. But like, this is the first film of Phase 5, I think, right? Because we finished 4 with Black Panther.
It was that 4?
Yeah, finished 4 with Guardians Holiday Special. Yeah, because we did our Phase 4 round.
Yeah, of course we did.
Never came back on that holiday special, did we?
No, I suppose because Phase 4 went past so for the first one of 5, I do think it's made a pretty good kind of impression on me. I would say. I think as well, because one of the main criticisms we and many others had of Phase 4 is that it kind of seemed to lack a bit of direction. Yeah. Whereas this does seem to be, it will be a key cog in a longer story.
I think that and connection to the wider thing. So direction and connection. I think this has got both of those.
And all the other shins.
I do think that some of its failings do lie on the fact that it is setting up other stuff.
Yeah.
And there's certain limitations of what they can do with certain characters, because they're like, well, this is the first, like, even with Cassie, like, it's not a spoiler to say she's obviously going to have some other adventures. Cassie Lang doesn't die in this, spoiler alert. But yeah, no, overall, do you want to go into some more detail then?
Yes, so we'll talk spoilers. On the positives, we mentioned some of the characters I did really enjoy. Kang, stars we have just spoke about, but Kang was a great villain. He was very different to Kang that we see in Loki. This one I felt a lot more powerful, and like this one did feel like Kang, a conqueror. I feel like at the end he made me like, it seemed like he was pulling his punches or something. But I still think the characterization was really
when
good.
He's like beating on, like, he's kind of effectively lost his technological powers, hasn't he? Because the ants will light him up, which is a bit silly, but I kind of like that. And he is like, he's a beefy guy, and he's fucking smashing Scott. Yeah, but he does kind of like fight back quite well, considering he's not got his powers. It's just like a powerless battle. Isn't it? So yeah, I would agree that like you'd think maybe he's got some sort of organic enhancements that would still put him.
But the character himself, I thought was great. He seemed terrifying, and like he seems like somebody who would go timeline to timeline conquering worlds.
And we've got that whole part when we're introduced to him, and Janet's working with him in the flashback, and it's kind of like you're kind of questioning whether he is like quite a complex mixed character or if he's just playing her the whole time. And it's still never really...
It feels like it's a bit of both.
Because we came out of this, when we had a quick conversation afterwards, it's like the whole thing, and it's the way the film ends with Scott, which is one of the bits I really liked, when he's kind of second guessing his whole actions, and he's like, well, this Kang told me that he was going to stop all the other Kangs. It's like, but that's the kind of thing a Kang would say. And I really, really enjoyed, because it's bookended with the happy-go-lucky Scott who's on top of the world, and it ends with kind of that, and then we see these intrusive thoughts, and he's kind of just like, and he's sat there, and he's at the birthday, and he's like, hang on. And it's like almost this overwhelming, like ominous feeling, and then it just goes back to normal, and then it just ends. And that was the bit where I was half expecting, a portal to open and all the Kangs to turn up and be like, "We're here," and then you're like, "Oh, when's this film set? Is there gonna, all this business?" And we do see that obviously with the post credits.
Yeah,
it's handled in a way that I wasn't expecting.
I do hope this version of Kang returns, because obviously we're probably gonna see multiple Kangs, but the fact that this is the one that was exiled, this is the conqueror, I hope we see. And also, like, if Kang's gonna be the big bad of this phase, and this Kang is the big one that the rest have got rid of, he can't be losing a fight to Ant-Man. he needs the whole Avengers team to go toe-to-toe.
Because they do come in the first post-credits or the mid-credit scene, there's the bit where we see like Ramatut, I can't remember all their names.
Lots of other Kangs.
There's the three main ones that I imagine we'll see a lot, and then there's the ultimate unlimited variants. I reckon, we'll probably either see them leading up to it, which is what we theorized back in the day, or maybe those three will be like the initial antagonists of the Kang dynasty, and then OG Kang turns up and is like, actually, I'm the bad guy. Some variation of that, I'm sure. And we also, while we're talking about variants, we see a little sneak peek of Loki season 2. And it's Victor Timely, which is like another variant back in Victorian times. So that's a nice fun connection that I wasn't expecting to see at all.
No.
And I think Loki 2 is this
summer.
year. So that's good. That's good fun. Yeah.
Another thing that I know that you were very hyped for that I didn't know going into was MODOK.
MODOK, yes.
Which was fun. And very silly. And it being Darren Cross was just like, it makes sense. It ties it all into them.
We spoke about it after. I think they'll hopefully bring in another version at some point. Maybe not a Darren Cross one.
I've got some trivia on MODOK that I'll go talk about in a minute.
I think the design I was kind of 50-50 on. I really liked like the body and the weird weapons with like the pink highlights.
Yeah.
When he's like fucking like just like
flying
sweeping around destroying everything. The mask I could do with that, and the face itself was like super uncanny valley. But I think, we've seen a lot of weird stuff in these films. I kind of just got past
and
it,
like
really.
The arms and legs did look a bit silly, but they do on MODOK. MODOK does have silly little legs and arms.
Yeah. I think when he started kind of turning and it's like, oh, actually, I don't want to be a dick and all that. It's quite funny, very Marvel, but it made me think, oh, so this isn't the MODOK we're going to see, because you want to see like just an evil mode. He's like an evil. He's like the pinnacle of just like evil.
Part of me feels like this is all we'll get.
It might be. Yeah, I think he's enough of a character that people like a weird character. But yeah, I thought that was pretty funny. And I'd seen a couple of little leaks earlier on, so I was kind of aware of that going in, and I was very happy to see that, to be honest.
Yeah. We got more positives. I've got a couple more.
Yeah. I liked the designs of a lot of stuff. I think there was lots of kind of goopy, almost like techno-organic stuff. Like the bit where they first go into the quantum realm felt very Doctor Strange. And I think we were talking after maybe Doctor Strange did go in that bit in that first film. I think the designs of everything. There's like the weird like Dune caravan of people, and they've got like. I thought that was all that was the bit that was really exciting me. I was like,
the ship that Hank Pym was driving with the weird goo.
Yes, yeah.
It's very organic.
We've seen that in something else, right? Where you put your hands in two gooey things. I can't remember what that is. It's definitely been in something fairly recently, but yeah. And like, there's certain bits, like the bit with the variants, kind of where it was like the different possibilities
of Ant-Man.
I quite like that.
I quite enjoyed that.
It kind of didn't really ever hit a point where I was like, this is really good. Like, it was quite it was an interesting, almost, it felt like it could be the climax of the film at that point.
Yeah.
But it did remind me of that Rick and Morty episode where it does the split screens.
I couldn't stop thinking about Rick and Morty.
And I didn't really like I liked how they were like, we all like want the best thing for Cassie, so we'll all work together. But then when Hope came in, it was just like, so she just did it, and then they just all went into one.
Yeah,
it was like, okay,
it's a bit of a cop out. Although I did like it when they all they were like ants. Yeah, and I was like,
that was good.
I think one thing we haven't really spoken about, but like this film was funny, particularly the first half.
Definitely, yeah.
There was bits that really, really made me laugh. It starts with him reading his own book, which was just funny off the bat.
It makes the most sense almost out of every. I mean, Tony Stark would have been the other character to do like a memoir kind of thing, like a sellout move. It makes sense for him.
It's
like,
very, very Scott Lang.
It worked really well, and that whole initial montage, you get like a lot of throwbacks. You get the Baskin Robbins guy. You get, Jimmy Woo's there. They've finally had their dinner, which is quite cute, which we talked about last week when we talked about Ant-Man and the Wasp. A lot of the comedy stuff. I think a lot of the heart was there still. I don't quite think they got to the levels of Scott and young Cassie.
No.
Because, you know, when you have like a cute kid and you've got like good chemistry, it works well when it works. But now it's two adults talking. It's not as the ants themselves, although it was quite telegraphed because it was like, these are my ants, they made their own technology. And then it's like, where are the ants gone? And then it's like, they were in a time thing for thousands. I was like, I love it. It's so stupid.
It was cool when they turned up and it was like these super advanced ants. And I was like, I'm here for this.
And Hank's they get Michael Douglas to just do a slow-mo walk towards the screen. And then I think one of them is just like, oh, that was you. And it's like, of course.
I can't remember who's, but one character was like, it might have been Bill Murray's character. He was like, you love ants. Like, what are ants? And it's like, he does love ants.
That was, they kind of set that up quite well because they kept talking about him being the ant guy. And he's like, ant science and stuff like that, and it's like, and I think they softened Hank Pym quite well. He had kind of gone into that granddad role.
Exactly, the lovable granddad rather than the old grumpy man.
Yeah, definitely. I don't have too much other positive stuff to say.
I've got a couple more bits. One with, we've already kind of mentioned that it felt similar to like a Guardians of the Galaxy film, and it could have been Guardians. But I mean, fundamentally, the first two Guardian films are better than the first two Ant-Man films. So like, for it to be more like that isn't necessarily a bad thing
at all.
Like they could be interchanged, but it still meant it was quite fun.
I mean, we say that. You could say that about a lot of Marvel films. Like any of the Guardians films could have been the Avengers have gone to space. Most of the time, there's a connection. Like Gamora doesn't need to be Thanos' adopted daughter. Could have been, you know, Black Widow or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like it's silly, but it's kind of
And the other thing I noticed when I was reading through the Reddit discussion is that a lot of people were a bit annoyed that Kang's meant to be this big bad, but he kind of gets killed off at the end. And I've been saying for years since Loki that like, I want Ant-Man to get killed in his first appearance in the film. So Kang. What did I say?
Ant-Man.
I want Kang to die and then come back, and then they'll be like, what? And that could be like, there's loads of him.
And the thing is, we see him go like even smaller than Quantum Realm. It was very like he's sucked into this weird, because it was the multiverse device combined with the shrinking thing, so it was like he very much got like, maybe he even got made more powerful. You never even
and
know.
he could turn up somewhere else.
He might have been given like the powers inherently, you know, because he glowed, he went all weird and shit.
Part of me wishes it was a different Kang, but I'm glad. I think the
thing is, there could be another Kang the Conqueror that's like exactly the same, but just didn't do this adventure. Or he's on a loop anyway. He might have done this bit already. Like this might be further back, like with the Doctor. But
Yeah, I think I said like after Loki that like I
Yeah.
just want a series. I think including like Doctor
Yeah,
Strange,
yeah,
a
that's what
series
I
of
was
films where
thinking, yeah.
every villain is Kang,
Yeah.
and he keeps getting defeated, but it's a different Kang.
That's what I mean. Even get him like Spider-Man, you know.
Yeah,
He
just
turns up to rob a bank like a classic Thanos copter situation where
Yeah.
like Spider-Man's chasing down Thanos or
So
whatever.
yeah, I'm completely okay with him.
Yeah, definitely.
Um,
Just on Kang, one thing I did like, his big golden multiverse thing is the time chair, which is his thing from the comics.
Yes.
So that was a
That was
nice
cool.
thing as well. Yeah.
Some things a bit more negative. One thing you've kind of touched on was the ants. I like the ants.
Yes.
But for a good like hour and a half in this film, there is 0 ants.
Yes.
And I was kind of like,
well, there's also
where are these fucking ants?
There's also very little Ant-Man stuff in this.
Yeah, they kept being like action scenes. And I like there was the bit where they're in the village and they get raided.
MODOK comes down, yeah.
And I was like, and
they're
just get big.
They're just running around.
Yeah, it's like just get big and crush them all.
Because a lot of it, we see Cassie has her suit, and then she is like bad at doing it, and Scott's talking about like the timing with the momentum and stuff, which kind of fills in some bits that we kind of had questions about. And we also see some bits where they're running and they're actually really slow, which is quite fun because it does some of the criticism we said before. But he kind of Scott's just like, here's how you do it, boom, 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 and then it's like for them like an hour there's no more Ant-Man stuff.
Yeah, that's
and it's
again
just a bit,
they could have been different characters. And it was like,
we didn't mention with Kang as well, like his powers that are just like these it's just whatever sci-fi power, because they say he has technology that's just from, so he basically has like telekinesis, he can kind of like stop time almost on people, like hypnotism, like lasers. The lasers he uses at the end almost like just erase you from time. People just disappear. There's just like that unlimited level of power is like almost he's got the Infinity Gauntlet already kind of shit, and that's what you want from like a villain like this. But yeah, so it's not much Ant-Man stuff. I was saying before, Cassie is kind of a bit of a wasted player in this, I think.
Yes.
Janet, I feel this was supposed to be like the Janet film in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But
I feel like her characterization was a bit weird. I mean, I mentioned to you at the end of the film, it was weird that we had a flashback to when she was there and she hadn't aged at all.
I think
so
maybe
the Kang stuff must have been recent.
It's quite recent.
But also, like, it's the fact that, like, okay, in the last one they had their big reuniting and it's kind of weird she didn't mention any of this shit.
Well, yeah, the bit that I fucking hated was when they first land, she's hiding them from the search ship, and they're like, tell us what's going on, and she's like, we don't have time, I'll tell you later. And then they just walk. And they just walk for ages. It's like, well, tell me a bit at least. Like, and I'm just like, that really annoyed me. I know that it's for the reveal later when she's forced to reveal it, because like Bill Murray could have been any character.
It was just Bill Murray. It was fine.
It was fine. It was like whatever. It was quite funny when it was like, oh, we've been fucking while you. Like, that was quite fun. And then Hank's like, I slept with someone twice. I like that. It was like, she was called Nancy and it didn't work out. And I was like, that's quite funny because it's 30 years, you know. But yeah, like that kind of thing where it's like, you could have avoided all of this by, it's the post-it note thing. Stick a post-it note on your head saying, I unleashed a guy in the quantum realm, don't go down there.
Yeah.
Like that was a very kind of weak point in the plot for me.
Yeah. I think another thing that I had some issues with from a directing point of view is towards the end of the film, it was particularly with Hank and the ants, where he was like, oh, I noticed something. And it kept being like, we get flashbacks to earlier in the film. And it happened a few times where like Hank flashes back to a few points earlier in the film. I think Janet does a couple of times. I'm like, I'm watching this film. I've just seen this happen. I don't need to be reminded of this.
I even think they did a kind of semi-joke version of it with Darren Cross as well, because they mention early on, Cassie's like, I thought like a yellow bee guy came into my room when I was 6. I've never had a normal life. And in my head, I'm like, right, that's setting up this coming up, because I'd, seen the leaks that it was pitched. But then when he comes on screen, they do like a best of Darren Cross. But then Scott like interrupts it as if it's like, hang on, we don't need to know this. But they did too much of it that it wasn't a joke.
And then the fact they did it with Hank as well, I was like, this is a really weird decision. The fact that
I think that's like a test audience thing where enough people probably were like, I didn't really understand the connection here. And they're really, they don't aim high with a lot of these. But like the big team ups are a bit more like, you should know everything. But like with these ones, it's like, maybe you didn't see the last Ant-Man film. probably didn't see the one before that. So it's just
But like it could have just been done by being like, Darren, last time I saw you were a bumblebee in the bedroom.
I'm not a fan of.
We didn't need to see it,
especially to previous films. I think it just, it feels a bit lazy. It feels like they had a final cut that then wasn't complete, and so they added leftover footage. And that's probably what happened. Yeah.
Another thing I had a sense towards the end with a lot of the ending. I feel like pieces were taken from other films that came out recently.
Okay,
the thing that stood out to me the most was when they're fighting their rebellion, and then they're like, oh, all the other people have heard our call and have turned up, and I was like, that's the Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, I did feel that as well. Even the big like hologram felt very the Emperor's.
And I was like, all these ships appearing and joining the rebel fight against this Emperor, and I'm like, the Rise of Skywalker wasn't even good. Why are they taking bits from that?
Even that whole rebellion with the wacky characters, as I said, is very Thor Ragnarok, and it's like these guys we've met, and we're gonna help them take back over again. Like it didn't like a lot of this film felt very unoriginal to me.
Yeah,
and that's a shame because there is some original stuff in like.
I think that's why
the Kang stuff, and even like the thing with the big core thing, like that whole concept is quite fun. Like,
exactly, and the multiple Ant-Mans in that core. But I think that's why the ending felt a little flat to me. Is that I was just like, oh, I recognise this from another film.
And we spoke about this coming out. The stakes are really weird in hindsight because they open up that yellow portal to get back up to the normal land or whatever, which I don't know how that works with shrinking and growing, but it doesn't matter. And then there's the whole fight where it's like, oh, I'm Scott and I've got to stop you, Kang, from going through. And then Hope turns up and she helps. And then the portal shuts after they're finished. And it's like, oh no, they're stuck there. And then Cassie's like, boop, boop, boop. And it just opens again. And it's like, and I spoke to you after, it's like, I would have preferred like, oh no, we're stuck here forever. They make a life for a month because of time dilation.
Yeah.
They've had a little holiday and then she comes back and it's like, oh, it's so good to see you, Dad. Like, it would have been a perfect chance to have like a little epilogue bit finale.
Or it could be a post-credit scene in another film. A post-credit scene.
I think they didn't want to trap Scott in the quantum realm again, but even do it for like 5 minutes of the runtime. Because what they could have done then to stop Kang from going through, just turn the portal off straight away. If you know you can open it up, just turn it off and leave.
There was bits like that when Scott was fighting Kang.
Yeah.
And Kang was almost like defeated.
Yeah.
And Scott kind of stood there over him and I was like, just go through the portal and turn it off.
Yeah.
Like there's a bit where Hope and
because
Scott
his thing
both stand there and look at him.
I think his little ball thing was still there, so they wanted to.
Yeah, there's a bit where it's kind of exploded and Kang's being like sucked next to it. And they both kind of stand there looking next to
yeah, they just
him.
Like push him at it a bit.
Just go in the portal.
Yeah,
and then it didn't matter anyway because Cassie just opened it back up. Which is kind of like the second Ant-Man film where it's like, oh, we've still got this one more thing to solve at the end. I don't know, someone can just
quantum
do it.
energy. Someone does it. Janet's got glowing hands now. They didn't mention any of that, did they?
No.
I feel like they could have got Ghost in with them or something,
Yeah. They didn't tell us how she's kind of got that power. Like quantum energy isn't really good enough for me.
Now they've all got it. They've been down there for however long. Yeah, or like, have some consequences. They go back up and it's been like an extra few years or something like that. And, I don't know, maybe I think they wanted it to be very self-contained. And as a result of that, although Scott is now kind of the harbinger for Kang, which is quite fun and means he'll probably turn up to warn somebody or he'll have the knowledge for the thing. Other than that, it's very much like it's just back to normal now, which I guess was kind of the point because Scott's now got this kind of existential dread.
But it's kind of weird in that it set up kind of the big bad and it also felt fairly inconsequential.
Yes, I think that's why it feels very mixed because you're like, the stakes were really high, but there's not really any kind of ramifications for it.
Yeah.
Because I think even because we see the Council of Kangs or whatever be like, hey, that guy's dead. I think maybe another post credits where there's a hint that he's not dead would have added to that ominousness
and
of it.
Like when it was built up to like Infinity War and Endgame and we had like what are like must watch films in the build up to the King Dynasty. I feel like it will just be the Kang scenes from this that are must watch. The rest of it is kind of, it doesn't really matter.
I think we were supposed to come away from it with the feeling that Kang was right and that the other ones were the bigger threat.
Yeah.
But I think because we all liked that Kang. It's kind of like, where's that Kang? Rather
Yeah.
than, like that Kang's clearly
I want my Kang.
my Kang, not this weird Egyptian Kang. Ugh.
Have you got anything else, or should we do some trivia?
No, I think I had some trivia, but I didn't write it down. So you go ahead.
So I've got this is Bill Murray's third comic book role. I was going to ask you if you know the other two. I don't reckon you'll get them.
I mean, technically Garfield is a comic.
Garfield is one of them, yeah, which is his second comic book role.
Ghostbusters isn't a comic, is it?
No, it's not.
Can I have a hint?
It's a radio show.
Oh, fuck that. Go ahead. Yeah.
He plays the Human Torch in the 1975 Fantastic Four radio show.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Nor did I, but that was quite funny.
Human Torch. God, wow.
I wouldn't think Bill Murray would be the Human Torch.
I mean, in some characterizations, he's pretty like jokey, isn't he? So I guess they went for like a young comedian at the time. Yeah.
And the other one I've got is that how there's been many attempts to incorporate MODOK into live action on the TV series. It's got a list here, which is in first one in '97. Jeff Vinter and Stan Lee wrote a script for Iron Man, in which MODOK was going to be the main villain.
MODOK would be a great Iron Man villain,
and was going to be the main villain.
Yeah.
Apparently they wanted MODOK to be in The Winter Soldier with Peter Dinklage playing him.
Wow. They're like, who's got a big head that we can choose?
But they rejected him to do Alexander Pierce instead. So he would have played that role.
So
it kind of makes more sense.
Yeah. And they kind of did it with the Zemo floating head anyway.
Yeah.
That's probably kind of part of it. Yeah.
There were plans to have MODOK in season 5 of Shield.
Oh, I mean, he would have been a perfect Shield.
It would have made.
He would have looked like absolute shit. But I would have loved it. Yeah.
But I think right towards like the end of the writing stages, Marvel pulled him out of it because they wanted to.
Yeah.
I think because at that point, Shield was becoming like semi-canon.
Yeah. And there was you might say there's the stop motion series, which was like the Robot Chicken kind of thing. That was a Hulu series.
Is that New Warriors?
No, it's called MODOK.
Yeah, of course.
And it was Patton Oswalt, and that was quite fun. It was very like he's the protagonist, and he wants to take over the world, but he's also like got a normal family, and they like hate him doing this stuff. And his daughter's like a MODOK like him, and his son is just a normal. It is quite funny. Nice. It's all on Disney Plus.
The other one is New Warriors. There's meant to be MODOK as a key villain in TV series that got cancelled.
Yeah, that was a lot of the New Warriors. Was that the one with like all the female superheroes, like Spider-Gwen,
quite possibly
Captain Marvel, Ms. Marvel, Squirrel Girl, that sort of thing. Yeah. I never watched any of that in the end.
I think it was cancelled, wasn't it?
No, it was. They started as some shorts. There's 10-minute shorts introducing each of them, and then I think they've got a team up special, but it's not like a full series. But that's all on Disney Plus as well. Yeah.
But yeah, that is all my trivia.
Yeah.
Which means all that's left is to ask you the all-important question.
Yeah.
Did Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania live up to the hype for you? Proj yes or proj no?
I think, considering I didn't get myself too hyped for this one, and I quite enjoyed it, I think it's a proj yes for me.
Yes, I think the fact that we have a very binary rating system here, I think I'm also going to go proj yes because
I think it skims a proj yes probably.
It's just about, if there was like a proj maybe, it might be in there, but it's more proj yes than proj no.
And I think if you think about like recent Marvel films and how we've kind of felt about some of them, you mentioned Thor. I think if you know, it is what it is, but
I think I'd lower hopes for this than Thor and Doctor Strange. So if it's kind of on par with those, then it's more.
Absolutely, I would say so.
But if our listeners have thoughts or want to proj yes or proj no, as well, please let us know. Our contact details are easy to find.
They're all in the episode description. And as well as that, if you like what you heard, we do episodes on projects throughout pop culture and history, which you can find on the Projects.
You can. But thank you for joining us for the end of the Ant-Man Silver Screen projects. We've got more Silver Screen projects lined up to start very shortly. It's
very
a busy year for Silver Screen Project. So we will hear you again soon, and I will hear you on the Project.
See you later.
Ants.
Ant, bye.